Welcome to another Dragonlance Saga review episode. It is Krynn Dark Ember the 12th. My name is Adam, and today I'm going to give you my review of Relics and Omens, plural, edited by Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman. I would like to take a moment and thank the DL Saga members and invite you to become a member or patron by visiting the links in the description below. You can even pick up Dragonlance gaming materials using my affiliate links. Now, this is my perspective only, and if yours differs, that's okay. Share your thoughts live in chat, or if you're watching this after the fact, put them in the comments. I'm having internet issues, so if this cuts out, know that it's my fault, and I'm going to do my best to get it back on track. Okay, so I'm just going to be going story by story and giving you my pre-written review, and then just riff a little bit if necessary. The first story is called Icefall by Niles. This is a great story about a centaur who was out tracking near the icewall. He discovered polar bear tracks that were headed back toward his tribe, so he followed them when a storm began to rise. He saw the tracks veer away, but since they were too close to his home, he decided to continue to pursue and kill this menace. He saw human tracks tracking the bear as well, and the storm kept increasing in intensity. Soon his visibility was slim to none, and he finally came across a human who relented the hunt and was returning home. He wished the centaur good luck on his hunt and left. Now that the centaur had the bear to himself, he continued on. The weather was getting to even his tough form, and suddenly the bear was there. They fought as two predators in a storm with limited vision. The centaur was wounded, but eventually killed the bear. He was debating on skinning it when a massive white form flew overhead. He suddenly realized the source of the storm was a dragon, and he knew that he had to get back to his tribe. He began to turn back, but his wounds were too great from his battle with the bear. He slumped down and thought of his mate as life faded away in the freezing cold. It was so good to read a story that focuses on the elemental nature of these dragon overlords and the helplessness that the mortals of the land have in their presence. The dragon was never even named, and it wasn't even overtly stated that it was there. It was only inferred that it was there. And I knew exactly what was happening. The fear in the centaur was palpable, and his sorrow at slowly dying, freezing to death before he could even get back to his wife was just devastating. And it was really, really good. All right, so the next story is called Legacy by Nancy Varian Berberick. And holy shit, this story got to me. This author is great. It's about an herbalist named Niles who came from a town where her family all died from a nameless disease. She was able to heal a few people with herbs if she got to them soon enough, but most died. So she left towards solace and stopped in a small town called Cour. Here she met a hill dwarf named Slean Bray, who convinced her to stay to help the people of the town. They quickly became true friends, and he constantly believed in her and her ability to tap into magic. She was unable and dismissed it, but he never stopped believing. When the plague hit Cour, she did her best to help a young girl, but the girl died anyway. She went to Slean to collect an herb, with Slean to collect an herb that may help others as it helped them in her past, and as Slean was climbing back from retrieving some, he fell and soon died. The moment when they were together, he accepted his fate and her in pure pain over it. On the memorial of me losing an old friend of mine I used to play AD&D with, it just really hit me hard. The story about friendship and the legacy of magic that came with their friendship. In me, that friendship is far too rare, and it makes me tear up thinking of friends that I have because of this story. Instead of the magic, their legacy of our world is connection and love. It's something that is discerning and earned, not given freely, but when it's there, it is powerful. Niles sat there weeping, and an eagle dropped its prey. Niles felt the magic swell inside of her, and she healed the creature. She had finally learned to tap into the magic of the world, but at what a cost. She returned to Cour with this legacy of magic within her. I love this story. It speaks to potential and supporting those you care about, especially when they don't believe in themselves. Hey, Julian, how you doing? Yes, I did read the Deathgate Cycle when I was a young man, and I loved it. I thought it was great. All right, let's see. Sword of Tears by Richard A. Knack. Whoa, Knack does it again. An old former cleric of Mishakal named Hermetes found the Sword of Tears on a Minotaur skeleton years after the Chaos War. The sword spoke to him of its former owners like Huma Dragonsbane, who slew Wormfather, and began to corrupt him. It led him to become the ruler of Kerman, and when bandits came to stop him, he murdered them all. The more he killed, the more the sword wanted to kill. He healed himself with the sword's magic, even struck the ground and made fruit grow, and the people worshipped him. When a Lord Draetor questioned his tactics and left, the sword convinced him that he must stop him. Hermetes demanded that his followers find the Lord and bring him to him. His followers claimed him, but the Lord's followers fought them, and Hermetes was drawn to the fight, killing friend and foe alike in its wake. When confronted with Lord Draetor, he was shown the young woman he just killed was the same woman that he had healed the day before, and Hermetes knew the sword was controlling him. He woke the next day after smashing himself into a rock to struggle with the sword on the mountaintop. The sword took control of Hermetes, but he still fought it, and summoned magical lightning to strike the tower, destroying Hermetes. The next day, Lord Drayton arrived with his men, intent on destroying Hermetes. Then he saw the devastation to the mountain. Knowing that no one could survive it, he was certain that Hermetes was dead. Or Hermetes, I don't know how you say it. Anyway, but he heard something calling to him. He decided to return the following day alone and seek the sword Hermetes wielded. It was a great story about losing yourself to power, how it's hard to stay true to yourself, but it's all we have as individuals, our conscience. The sword is out there, and where will it end up? All right, the next short story is called The Cost by Robin McGrew. This was another really good story. It's about knights' honor to their gods and themselves, and what it means in the absence of the gods. Sir Dariot Torson, Knight of the Sword, was feeling unworthy and told to go on an honor quest, where he happened across the small hamlet of Prada. The Knights of Takesis had taken much of their food, and they were going to rely on throughout the winter, so Dariot went to demand the food back. He appealed to the knights' honor and called for a duel. They accepted. He faced off against Sir Merrick, a knight of Takesis, and they were both evenly matched, with the gods' power reflected in their clashing of swords. They ended up the battle exhausted and wounded, and the Lord Commander of the Knights of Takesis gave the knight a third of the provisions for the town. As Dariot returned, he felt like a failure, and the townspeople soon began to starve. After the death of a young woman, he decided to go back and find the food caches. This is when the gods left Krynn in the Chaos War, and the new moon was strange. Merrick was left to guard the cache as he was no longer trusted by his commander for failing to kill the Knight of Solamnia. He felt like a failure and tried to appeal to Takesis, but he heard nothing. Then Dariot came, and they faced off again in battle, only this time with no gods at their backs. They fought to a draw again and realized the gods had left. In their absence, they must rely on each other, and Dariot invited Merrick to join him to lead and protect Prada for the winter. Merrick had no other option and agreed. It was a nice story about finding strength in others when the gods abandon you, and that when you put all of your sense of self in something else, who are you when that other thing leaves? I really like the Fifth Age because it speaks to being true to yourself, not because a god wants you to act a certain way, but because you want to be that person. Hey Chris, how you doing, man? A Most Peculiar Artifact by Janet Pack is the next article, or short story I should say. This story is about Tangle-Toe Thistlenut, a Kender obviously, who is selling a map to Kyrenar of the Black Robes. Kyrenar is looking for an artifact, and when he tries to buy a Kender's map, the Kender refuses, saying it's his very best. The Black Robe takes him out of the tavern where his henchman is waiting and has him beat the Kender senseless. He takes the map and leaves after the artifact. The Kender wakes, sore and hurt, but goes after the mage anyway. After all, he wants his map back. He catches up using deer trails and tells the mage that he knows a fast way to the secret artifact. They arrive to discover a Knight of Solamnia guarding the artifact. Apparently, whoever reads it gains power from it and it becomes useless. So the mage asks many questions, posing as a scholar, and the knight answers as best as he can. That night, the kender tells the mage about the key, and the mage questions the knight. They reveal the location of the artifact, and the mage digs it up. He begins reading it, and it states that if a mage is in the company of a kender, he will lose his voice. And then he does, instantly, and the artifact loses its power. Now the mage is furious, but wholly useless, and chases after his thug who leaves. The knight congratulated the kender, who, it is revealed, were working together for this very purpose. Then they go about their own ways, the kender going back after the mage for his map. It was a fun way to tell a story about greed getting the best of you, and it presents kender in a very clever way of not just being the foil or patsy, but the architect of a scheme, and I really enjoyed it. The next short story is called Voices by Kevin T. Stein. This story has an oddly abrupt ending. It is also inferred a cat was magical without any explanation. Two kender are returning to Hilo for dinner with Belladonna, the kender leader, and a cat named True Silver arrives. It's Belladonna's cat. So the cat is surprised by the two kender walking in Clear Eyes, so they go looking for it to bring it back. They're trampled by a group of goblins who are also chasing the cat and capture it. The kender capture one of the goblins and finds out that there is an ancient goblin prophecy about sacrificing a magical cat on this very night, and it will destroy the dragons, especially the new large ones. So they go after the cat. Let's see. I'm sorry, I just lost my place. So the goblins believe True Silver, the cat, is that magical cat they have to kill. The two kender leave the goblin tied up and go after the cat. They find the group and split them up with rocks and cat sounds, then take the cat and a key around the lead goblin's neck and leave. And that's it. It's half of a short story at best. I suppose it did a good job, as I really do want to know what the key is to, and whether the cat is magic. Clear Eyes has been hearing voices in his head like a conscience, and it's driving him crazy. And it's inferred that the voice is the cat's, as if the cat is actually a silver dragon in disguise, but that's just my conjecture. Anyway, I wish there was more to the tale. The next story is called The Notorious Brook of Stars. I'm sorry, actually that's a typo. It's the Notorious Book of Stars. That's weird. All right, so this was an odd tale about two clerics, Dave and Lael, who work for a priest, Tyrannus. Dave is writing a book, and the ideas in it are inspired by a poet he knows named Hanel. They live in a town that is controlled by the joyous faithful guard who murder and torture heretics. The ideas in the book are heretical, but without proof, the guard cannot act against the clergy. One night, Dave and Kale have a poetry contest with a kender named Frenny as the judge, when the guard comes in and overhears some heretical lines. The clerics leave immediately. Once the book is published, it's revealed to have heretical content, and the citizens of the town and the guard chase after Dave and catch him. He is to be burned in a pyre with his books. He's saved by a pregnant woman who turns out to be Kale, who is really a woman named Kale. Instead of Kael, it's Kale. And Frenny under her dress as the baby. They all agree to start making plays and travel together after having escaped. It's a very odd story, and it talks about inventions like the printing press and flying machines. It feels out of place and time, with no indication of where it is or when it takes place. The collection is supposed to be in the Age of Mortals, but they talk about the gods a lot. It really doesn't make sense. And in the end, when the boy with the boy actually being a girl and the ease of their escape, it seems too illogical to think about anymore, so I won't. The next is called Scavengers by Gene Rabe. This was a great story about 3 sea elves who were scavenging a downed ship believed to be from a dragon attack, and there is a sea dragon's lair nearby. They continued to scavenge and came across a chest with a green orb in it, then discover a human alive floating near a bubble of trapped air. Tel Yil took the human to the surface, fighting a brown shark on the way, to learn that the ship wasn't downed by a dragon, but by greed. These men were also scavengers and took treasure which included this orb. Once it was opened from its chest, it spread disease incredibly fast to the crew. The infected were fighting. for the orb from the uninfected, and it ended in the whole ship being lost. Teliel instantly swam as fast as she could to her group of scavengers to stop them from taking the orb to their home, but she was too late. She got there to see the whole community sick. She sent the healthy away and took the orb to the dragon's lair, hoping in her death the dragon would covet the orb, but she died before she could see the dragon arrive. It was an exciting story about the finality of finding a diseased item and the helplessness you find yourself in the absence of the gods. The self-sacrifice Teliel exhibited was exactly what I think most people would do if they discovered the truth about the object, and I really liked her quick thinking of killing the dragon with the orb. Just another great short story from Jean Rabe. All right, the next story is called Homecoming by William W. Connors and Sue Wineland Cook. What a great story. It's about a knight of Takhisis who, after the Chaos War, was returning home to his keep in Estwild on the shoreline, and his blue dragon mount, Dusk, saying that he may be done with the knight after Takhisis abandoned them, with the knights of Takhisis. But he would return and the dragon would be at his side. Then a massive red dragon attacked them out of nowhere. This beast was a force of nature and didn't care about old alliances or knights or queens. All it wanted was to feast on the blue dragon. The knight tried to fight the dragon, but it ignored all of his attacks, even with his magical sword. He ended up being cut from the dragon by his dragon, and fell to the ocean as he watched the red dragon consume and drain his blue dragon of its life energy. He woke on the beach, and a great green dragon started attacking the red dragon, clearly indicating that this is at the beginning of the dragon purge. The knight understood that he had to report this to the knights in Naraka, where they had all been summoned, where he didn't want to go, but this new threat had to be reported. He knew that the gods may be gone, but the mortals must band together against these great worms. It was a great story and a great setup for the Dragon Purge and the Age of Mortals. The helplessness against the massive dragons and the dragons getting stronger and larger by devouring the other dragon's life force was awesome. I really enjoyed this part of the Fifth Age, and it's nice to read about it after years have passed since its release. All right, the next story, The Restoration by Jeff Crook. Whoa. This story is about a former red-robed mage named Alantine who is restoring the library at Tarsus when a black-robed apparition appears and frightens him. Then we cut to a former cleric of Paladine named Eltam who is traveling to assist Alantine. He finds him terrified in the library and shows him a scroll which speaks of a third level to the library, where everyone only knows of 2 levels. In addition to this, it speaks of Fistandanalist entrusting a spell book to the librarian. It must still be there beneath them somewhere. They search the 2nd level only to slowly fall into a slide of books and discover the 3rd level. Alantine discovers the book, but is attacked by undead wraiths there. He's saved by the cleric as the wraiths close around them, in addition to the Knight of Salamnia remnant, who is given the book by Fistandanalist before the Cataclysm. He faces off against them, and they nearly get to the stairs when Alantine is attacked again. Eltam discovers the power of the heart to push back the undead, but knows it can't last, and Alantine flees from the library with the book. It is revealed that now Fistandanalist is back in the world with the release of this spellbook. It's a great way to introduce Fistandanalist back into your home campaigns, and a great way for Palin discovering sorcery, as that is what the book was meant to be about. Fistandanalist is trying to discover magic without relying on the 3 gods of magic. This brings up so many wonderful ideas on how to tie Fisty into my Tyranny of Dragons campaign, and I cannot wait to get to it. Great story. All right, the next one is called Relics by Jeff Grubb. This is the 2nd time that I have read this. The first was in a Dragon magazine, and it's still just as good a story. It's about a small town that a peddler visits and tells tall tales about his wares. Heroes have used weapons and the like. Pieces of Fizban's burnt staff from fighting chaos, Sturm's blade from killing the dragon Kitiara. Clearly, with time, the fables are twisted. He does well selling his wares to the town, then goes to the smith to have more Sturm's daggers made. He offers a crystal vial as payment, but the smith only wants money. The peddler presses on the issue, and the smith smacks the vial away from him. It bursts on the floor and releases a chaos minion. It attacks the group, who fight back, including the smith's son. They eventually defeat it, and the peddler wants the smith's tools to sell, but the smith refuses. Then he reveals that he has a lot more vials, but he thought they were all fake. Knowing that they may hold chaos minions, he decides to stay and take up work as the new smith, and the smith and his son go on to take the peddler's cart and equipment. It's a fun story about a peddler hoodwinking the public, but then realizing he actually has artifacts of power. Normally, people who refuse to have the wool pulled over their eyes then deal with the fallout and then move on with their wares. I really enjoyed the story. All right. The Summoners by Paul B. Thompson. This was a rough story. A man named Falcon enters a corrupt and vile town of Croden and surveys the area. Then enters a tavern and saves a half-elf from being raped. Then the next morning feeds a bunch of malnourished children and gives a speech at high noon. He tells the people of Caradon that the gods can return if they live in virtue and not vice, as they are now. The people laugh at him, and the magistrate has him arrested. The children and elderly try to stop them, but to no avail. He's held on trial and sentenced to be killed. On the day of his execution, lightning strikes the executioner and the people revolt, only to steal from those in power after they fall. The children and elderly now follow Falcon out of town, where it is revealed that he is the general of an army named the Summoners, and they are bringing justice to the land even if they have to kill to see it done. They surround the town with the army and destroy it entirely. This is the most 5th Age story I can imagine. Locals turn to hedonism and exploitation in the absence of the gods, and those who preach virtue are also murderers. There are no good people, only versions of evil. I get this in the context of a fantasy story, but in reality, you don't need gods to be a good person. You can just be a good human. I hate it when the presence of the gods or threats of a burning hell are the only reason people are good, out of fear. Why not forsake the gods and just be a decent person? I did enjoy the story, though. All right, the next short story is called Island of Night by Roger E. Moore. This was a wonderful story that reminds me of Robinson Crusoe. Weeks after the gods left Krynn, a knight of Takesis, Angren, is sailing with brutes and other knights when they come to an island. They discover it is populated by a single gnome. But at night, hordes of ghouls come out, the cursed of Zeboim, and kill. His crew dies, leaving Angren and the gnome Hudge. As time goes by, Hudge reveals that there's a treasure pile here that was supposedly cursed, which explains the ghouls, and that he was left by his gnome companions accidentally. The whole time, the knight is cruel to the gnome and abuses him regularly. The knight learns that the gnomes made hot air balloons to get off the island, and that is how Hudge was accidentally left behind. But there's another balloon. They transfer all the treasure to the ship, fix it to the balloon, and lift off, but the knight throws the gnome off the ship, leaving him stranded. Then, as he's sailing away, a storm comes in, and the knight realizes that the ship's hold is full of ghouls as well as the treasure. The gnome had intentionally left the hold unlocked after the knight's abuses, and now lives happily on the island alone. It was such a wonderful tale, filled with isolation and loss, then hope and excitement, all framed by the reader's hatred of the knight and his cruelty. He definitely got what he deserved, and I loved the story. All right, the last story in this collection is called Demons of the Mind by Margaret Weis and Dawn Perrin. This is the second time I am reading this short story, and holy hell is it still just as wonderful and painful. It's about Karaman and Tika Majir hiring a barmaid named Jassar, who is clumsy and breaks plates all the time. Karaman wants to fire her, but Tika refuses, as she can't seem to keep a job, and her husband doesn't work. Worst still, her husband beats her. Karaman is having none of this, and goes to talk to the man. His name is Gamel, and he is a veteran of the Chaos War. He is a drunk, and Karaman knows all about that. He tries to talk to the man, but he attacks him. After a scuffle, Gamel breaks down in tears. He is in constant pain with his missing arm, lost in the war. He can feel his fist squeezing tightly to the sword hilt. It will not stop, and the pain is horrible. Karaman, knowing something of phantom pain in the absence of his brother Raistlin and war, decides to help the man. He gives instructions to Tika to have the carpenter build a special box for him, and he leaves to take Gamel on a trip. They end up at the battle site where Gamel lost his hand, and the memories come rushing back. He was a messenger runner and brought a message to a Solamnic knight while they were battling a chaos demon. He distracted the knight and the demon killed him. Gamel's fist was clenched tightly on his sword hilt and he swung it into the demon, and the demon tore off his arm. He passed out and woke in a medic tent. He saw that the bodies were being put into a mass grave and his arm ached incessantly. He drove his sword into the ground to mark the grave and left for home. Now he collects his sword and returns home with Caraman. Caraman has him put the sword in the box and then put his two arms, the real and phantom arm, into the box. He casts a spell and has Gamel open his eyes. He sees two arms in the box. Caraman tells him to release his fist, and the man does, finally relieving him of the pain. Jassar and Gamel leave to have happy lives, and Caraman is seen with renewed awe by the community. It's revealed that he did it with a mirror in the box at the end of the story. This story makes me openly weep when I read it. It reminds me of all the veterans... it's getting me again. All the veterans that I grew up with from the Korean and Vietnam Wars, men who were physically scarred and unable to even talk about the horrors that they witnessed. Man, this gets me. Men who are far too common in the military, who use them for their goals, then seem to largely abandon them when they leave. Our country has historically done a terrible job taking care of its veterans, and it's why I have every single gaming episode set up as a fundraiser for nonprofit organizations which support veterans and active duty soldiers, because we as civilians of this country owe them our respect for standing up in defense of us, of our freedoms, and of our country, something the vast majority of civilians refuse to do. All right, sorry guys, this stupid story hits me really, really hard. By and large, this was a mediocre collection, I think, with a few really great gems in it, which is really as good as it gets with most times when it comes to anthologies. And the more, like after having gone through this time, it's actually really a lot better than I frame it here. It's a really good collection with a couple bad stories in it. If you're a DragonLance fan, you should definitely read this. The stories that shine are just brilliant, and they largely make up for any of the one or two of them that don't. All right, let's see what you have to say here. All right, this is your favorite collection. You had two knights fighting story. The exact moment the gods left is a really powerful moment narratively. Yeah, I really, really like that one. The cat story was the only one you didn't like in the collection. It just ended so weird and abruptly. I didn't understand it. You love the book story. It reminded you of astronomers in prior centuries that were persecuted by the church for their discoveries about the universe. That's interesting. I didn't connect it with that way, but that's definitely a good way of seeing it. Scavengers was cool. You love the ending, leaving the cursed orb for the sea dragon. Yeah, I thought that was a great way to handle it. You hate to be a broken record, but the early 5th Age era to you is the best game setting in Dragonlance era. The lack of divine intervention, dragon overlords. I think it's great for the stories, and I think it's great for narrative. But I do really love the gods in Dragonlance, and so I'm torn between when the gods are there and when they're not on which is better. For future novels or campaigns, I'd much rather see Fistendalis return instead of Dekesis. Much better boss level. I agree. And with two stories, this short story and the novel Fistendalis, what is that novel called? I've read and reviewed it and I can't remember. Anyway, he's back in both of them. So we can definitely be using Fistendalis in our home campaigns. You forgot about the Weis and Hickman story. You loved it and can't get enough stories of Caraman and Tika in this era. Proprietors of the inn take care of the townsfolk. You could read a whole series on this. Thank you, Chris, very much for that. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for sharing thoughts in this heart with that last story. Nice. Please apply this to the Wounded Warriors Fund in your name. Oh, nice. I will definitely do that. Appreciate it, man. All right, so that's the collection. Anytime any of those, like, military stories hit, it's going to affect me like this. I can't help it. I don't know why. It just does. So thank you for sucking up a dude crying, trying to talk about a story. I know it's awkward and it's annoying. That's going to do it for my review of Relics and Omens, edited by Margaret, Weis, and Tracy Hickman. What did you think of the anthology? Do you enjoy stories that affect you emotionally? And finally, do you enjoy this post-Chaos War collection? Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga.com or leave a comment below. I'd like to thank my creator patron, Aaron Hardy, and developer patron, Chris Androu. I would also like to take a moment and remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the like button. This all goes to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this channel and its content. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the Dragonlance Saga, and I hope you'll join me in the celebration. Thank you for watching. This has been Adam with Dragonlance Saga, and until next time, Slán Javar.